Get lost. On my phone screen, next to the bright red exclamation mark, the two words were an island of ice in a digital sea. My name is Jack Carter. I'm worth north of $10 billion. And at the ripe old age of 28, I gloriously retired. At this very moment, I was sprawled out on the deck of my private yacht, surrounded by a bikini-clad party. Champagne bubbles popped in the sunlight, and a blonde was trying to feed me a peeled grape. I ignored all of it. For the 108th time, I had sent a good morning text to a woman named Evelyn Reed, and for the 108th time, she had blocked me. I sighed and shoved the phone in my pocket. My best friend and former CTO, Leo Vance, was giving me a look that screamed disappointment. Dude, what is the endgame here? Look at this, he said, gesturing at the scene around us. This is living. What's so great about this Reed woman anyway? She's an ice queen. You could get frostbite trying to warm her up. He pointed to the models, all of them tossing sultry glances my way. Any one of them could have sent a Wall Street titan into a tailspin. I picked up a glass of whiskey, took a sip, and said nothing. Leo didn't know that before I retired, I had another life. A life that could never be spoken of, a life that would never appear in any file. My handler, a man we called the Colonel, gave me one last mission on the day he processed my retirement. It was the last one, he'd said, and the most important. Protect Evelyn Reed. Her father, Dr. Reed, was one of ours. The prototype for the Starfire chip he developed for the country went missing after his accidental death. We have reason to believe the trail leads back to Evelyn, and a foreign syndicate, codenamed Spectre, has her in their sights. The Colonel had clapped me on the shoulder. Your new identity is the perfect cover. A playboy billionaire, obsessed with women and wasting money, won't raise any suspicion. Your job is to get close to her in the most plausible way possible, protect her, and stay with her until we can root out Spectre's sleeper agents. And what was the most plausible way? I looked at the corporate headshot of Evelyn on my phone, her expression frozen and severe. For a young, obscenely wealthy bachelor, what was more plausible than becoming a relentless, no-expenses-spared simp? And so, a top-tier Black Ops protection detail was disguised as a cheesy, gender-flipped romance movie. And I was the pathetic, lovesick lead. All right, party's over, I said, standing up and clapping my hands. The music died. Disappointed pouts appeared on the girls' faces. Leo was aghast. Bro, we just got started. I ignored him and walked straight to the captain's quarters, picked up the satellite phone, and dialed an encrypted number. It's me. The Colonel's steady voice came through the line. Status. Target's defenses are high. All conventional attempts at contact have failed. I'm moving to an enhanced protocol. Maintain your cover. Don't get made. Don't worry, I said, a smirk touching my lips that felt foreign even to me. As far as anyone is concerned, I'm just a hopeless romantic. I hung up. Fine. So I had to be a simp. For the mission, I'd be the most dedicated simp the world had ever seen. The next day, outside the Reed Industries Tower, a massive refrigerated truck was parked at the curb, a banner hanging off the side in spectacularly bad taste. A smile from Evelyn could melt glaciers. So Jack Carter bought you all of Seattle's ice cream. I stood in front of it in a ridiculously pink suit, holding a bouquet of those tacky, dyed blue roses. The security guard at the door wanted to stop me, but they hesitated. After all, yesterday's headlines were all about my latest 9-figure tech acquisition. Evelyn's assistant, a sharp woman in gold-rimmed glasses, came clicking out on her heels, a practiced, plastic smile on her face. Mr. Carter, Ms. Reed is in a meeting and doesn't have time to see you. Furthermore, your display is causing a significant disruption to our business. I offered her the flowers with my most charming grin. That's fine, I can wait. And the ice cream, please distribute it to all the employees. Consider it an afternoon treat on me. The assistant's smile faltered. She clearly hadn't expected me to play it this way. Just then, Evelyn herself walked out of the building. She was wearing a tailored black power suit, her long hair pulled back, revealing a smooth forehead and a neck like a swan's. Her eyes swept over me as if I were a pop-up ad, not even pausing. She walked straight toward her car, a black Bentley. I immediately moved to intercept her, shoving the flowers in her path. Evelyn, Mr. Carter, she finally spoke, her voice as cold as her demeanor. I don't know what your objective is, but I have no interest in your childish games. It's not a game. I'm serious about you, I said, my face a mask of deep sincerity. A sarcastic curve touched her lips. She moved a step around me and opened her car door. Evelyn, I said, getting desperate, and grabbed the edge of her car door. In that exact instant, a tiny glint of light from the rooftop of the building across the street caught the corner of my eye. Sniper. My blood ran cold. My pupils contracted. There was no time to think. My body was already moving. I shoved Evelyn hard into the car, simultaneously throwing myself to the ground in a clumsy-looking heap, rolling under the front of the car. Thwump! A dull crack, swallowed by the city's noise. A bullet slammed into the pavement, right where I had been standing. Inside the car, Evelyn, who had stumbled from my push, looked at me with a mixture of shock and fury. Carter, are you insane? The onlookers were stunned. In their eyes, the billionaire Jack Carter, in his pursuit of a woman, had just debased himself by literally rolling around on the ground. It was the joke of the year. I crawled out from under the car, brushing dust off my suit, my face a perfect picture of embarrassment. I slipped. Evelyn's assistant ran over, her eyes full of contempt. Mr. Carter, please refrain from harassing Miss Reed in the future. I looked at Evelyn. The disgust in her eyes was practically overflowing. I knew that in her mind, my stock had just plummeted into negative territory. But I didn't care. I glanced down at the flattened bullet I had discreetly covered with the sole of my shoe. My heart was a block of ice. Spectre, they were moving faster than I thought. Evelyn's car sped away, leaving me alone with a truck full of melting ice cream. Employees peeked out of the high-rise windows, pointing and whispering. I could guess what they were saying. Look, the Simp is back. Hilarious. What's $10 billion get you? Treated like trash by our CEO. I stood up, unfazed, and straightened my expensive pink suit. I called out to the security guard. Hey man, pass this stuff out, would you? It's a hot day. Don't let it go to waste. With that, I started whistling, hopped in my Aston Martin, and peeled out, leaving nothing but the scent of burning rubber behind. 2 blocks away, the smile vanished from my face. I dialed the encrypted number. Colonel, they made a move. 7.62 millimeter, custom armor-piercing round. Professional sniper. This wasn't a warning shot. It was a kill shot. The colonel's voice turned grave. So soon? It seems we've underestimated how badly they want Starfire. Was your cover maintained? I performed a spectacular faceplant in front of about 100 witnesses. The entire company now thinks I'm a fool who would literally fall for a woman. My tone was laced with self-mockery. The colonel was silent for a few seconds. Tough break, son. It's not the hardship, it's the indignity, I muttered, glancing at my handsome face in the rearview mirror. A face like this shouldn't have to endure such humiliation. Protect the asset. If necessary, you are cleared for Protocol B. Understood. I hung up and pulled the car over, taking a tablet from the glove compartment. A red that was moving slowly across the screen. Evelyn's Bentley. I'd hidden a micro-tracker in that bouquet of blue roses. Spectre wouldn't give up after one failed attempt. Where would the next attack come from? I pulled up the security schematics for the Reed Industries tower, which I'd hacked and downloaded the night before. Elevators, parking garages, fire escapes. Every corner was a potential kill box. Suddenly, the red dot on the screen stopped. Location, the Apex Tower downtown, parking level P3. What was she doing there? I instantly pulled up Evelyn's schedule for the day. At 3 p.m., she had a meeting with Victor Shaw, the CEO of Apex Global. Shaw, a spoiled heir who'd been trying to acquire Reed Industries' core tech division for months, and who Evelyn had shot down more than a dozen times. This guy was dirty. Without a moment of hesitation, I floored it, the car launching forward like an arrow from a bow. When I arrived at the Apex Towers parking garage, it was eerily quiet. I didn't use the main entrance. I slipped in through a ventilation duct, silent as a ghost. Years in the field had given me an animal's instinct for danger. There was a faint, unusual chemical smell in the air. I found Evelyn's Bentley. It was empty. I scanned a garage, and in a far corner, near a fire exit, I spotted 2 men in maintenance uniforms. They weren't holding tools. They were holding pistols fitted with suppressors. They were waiting for someone. I ducked behind a concrete support pillar, pulled out my phone, spoofed the number of Evelyn's assistant, and sent Evelyn a text. Ms. Reed, Mr. Shaw reports a problem with the AC in the conference room. He's moved the meeting to the VIP lounge in Tower B. Please proceed there directly. A few seconds later, I saw Evelyn appear from the elevator bay. She glanced at her phone, frowned, then turned and walked toward a different set of elevators. The two hitmen apparently got an update as well. They spoke briefly into their earpieces, then moved quickly in the direction of Tower B. My opening. I followed them, silent as a predator. The connecting corridor to Tower B was dimly lit, the perfect place to make a move. As the first gunman rounded the corner, I dropped from the pipes I was clinging to on the ceiling. One hand clamped over his mouth while the other pressed a custom taser to the back of his neck. He went limp without a sound. The second gunman sensed something was wrong and started to turn. I was already on him. His eyes widened. His move to raise his gun seemed to play out in slow motion. A knife hand strike to his wrist sent the gun flying. A knee to his stomach folded him in half. I grabbed him by the hair and slammed his face into the concrete wall. "Who sent you?" I whispered, my voice cold as the grave. His mouth was full of blood, but he tried to stay tough. I smiled and pulled a small metal clip from my pocket, attaching it to his pinky finger. "I used to run interrogations in Afghanistan. Trust me, you don't want to go down that road." 3 minutes later, I had what I needed. They were low-level Spectre contractors, tasked with creating a diversion and kidnapping Evelyn. The man who gave them the order and Evelyn's location was Victor Shaw. I knew it. I disposed of the two men, took one of their phones, and dialed Victor's number. "Is it done?" Victor's voice came through, dripping with smug satisfaction. "It's done," I said, mimicking the hitman's gravelly tone. "We have the package. Where's the exchange?" "Excellent. Bring her to the abandoned warehouse district by the West Highway. And remember, don't hurt her. She's my prized possession." I hung up, a murderous glint in my eye. Prized possession? Soon, you won't even possess your own life. Back in my own car, I tore off the obnoxious pink suit and changed into a set of black athletic wear. In the mirror, the grinning, empty-headed air was gone. In his place was a warrior, his eyes sharp, his presence coiled and dangerous. This was the real me. I drove back to the Reed Industries tower. Evelyn had just finished her meeting, a meeting, of course, that Victor Shaw never showed up for. She walked out of the building, a look of confusion and annoyance on her face. I immediately slipped back into my Simp persona, jogging up to her with a freshly bought boba tea. "Evelyn, you're done with your meeting. You must be exhausted. Here, have a drink." Seeing me, her brow furrowed even deeper. The disgust in her eyes intensified. "Carter, are you mentally ill?" "Yeah, lovesick. And you're the only cure," I said, holding the drink out to her. She didn't even look at it, just sidestepped me coldly and walked toward her car. Just then, her assistant came rushing out. "Ms. Reed, bad news. We just received a notice from Apex Global's legal team. They've unilaterally terminated their contracts with all of our downstream suppliers." Evelyn stopped dead in her tracks and spun around. "What does that mean?" "Apex Global bought out our entire supply chain. As of today, our production lines will be completely shut down. He's cut us off at the knees." The assistant's voice was trembling. The color drained from Evelyn's face. Reed Industries was a leader in the field, but they focused on R&D, relying heavily on an external supply chain for manufacturing. Shaw's move was a corporate death grip. "Victor," Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin, hard line, her body trembling slightly. I stood there, watching this proud, stubborn woman look so helpless, and felt an unexpected pang in my chest. She had always been a fortress, wrapped in impenetrable walls. But right now, those walls were starting to crumble. I walked over and gently pushed the boba tea into her cold hand. "It's not a big deal," I said, my tone casual, as if we were discussing the weather. "So, a few suppliers bailed. I'll handle it for you." Evelyn looked up, her expression a mix of anger, confusion, and something else she probably didn't even recognize. A flicker of doubt. "You." Her voice was raspy. "How are you going to handle it? With your money?" "Carter, this isn't one of your games that you can just buy your way out of." "And why not?" I shot back with a grin. 99% of the world's problems can be solved with money. And as for that last 1%, I paused, locking eyes with her, and said, word by word, "That can be solved with more money." Then, right in front of her, I took out my phone and called Leo. Yo, Leo, need a favor. Bro, what insane scheme have you cooked up now? I am swamped. Apex Global. Victor Shaw's company. I want it. And I want it gone before the sun sets today. The line went dead silent for a full 10 seconds. Then Leo's voice exploded through the phone. Holy yes. Dude, are you serious? That's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Is that a problem? No, no problem. Leo's voice was suddenly electric with excitement. You just watch me work. Hostile takeovers are my Mona Lisa. I'll leave that prick without his boxer shorts. I hung up and met Evelyn's utterly dumbfounded gaze. She probably thought I was putting on a show, bluffing. I gave her a wink, my smile full of a reckless confidence. See? Easy. For you, I wouldn't just take down one Apex Global. I'd take down 10. With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving her standing there. I knew, in that moment, my image in her mind had changed. I was no longer just an annoying, pathetic simp. I was a mad dog who could flip the whole table over. The abandoned warehouse district on the west side. Victor Shaw stood by a second-floor window, looking at his phone with a smug grin. The financial news alerts were already rolling in. Apex Global stock plummets on open following hostile short-selling attack. Market cap drops by $10 billion in 30 minutes. But he wasn't worried. He had already moved his assets and hedged his positions. This was a small price to pay. Once he had Reed Industries' Starfire technology, he'd make it back in a day. He wanted Evelyn, yes, but he wanted the mountain of gold she was sitting on even more. Where are they? It's taking too long, he asked one of his bodyguards impatiently. The bodyguard just shook his head. Victor's eyelid twitched. A bad feeling started to creep in. Just then, the massive factory door creaked open. A lone figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the fading daylight. It wasn't his hired guns. It wasn't a captive Evelyn. It was Jack Carter, the fool, the rich idiot who was nothing more than a running joke to him. You. Victor's face was a mask of disbelief. What are you doing here? I ignored him, casually surveying the space. Not bad, I said with a nod. Spacious, remote. Good place to get rid of a body. Victor laughed as if he'd just heard the funniest thing in the world. Get rid of a body? You? Carter, has chasing that woman finally broken your brain? Do you have any idea who I am? Victor Shaw, CEO of Apex Global. I began, my voice even, low-level informant for the Spectre Syndicate. 3 months ago, you funneled $30 million offshore through illegal channels. Last month, you provided logistical support for Spectre Agent S 17th entry into the country. Yesterday, you hired a team to kidnap Evelyn Reed. Am I wrong? With every sentence I spoke, a shade of color drained from Victor's face. By the time I finished, he was ashen, his expression pure terror. Who are you? He stammered, backing away. His 4 bodyguards immediately stepped forward, forming a wall between us. Who I am doesn't matter, I said, cracking my knuckles. What matters is that after today, you won't be anyone at all. Get him. Take him apart. Victor shrieked. The 4 men, all former special forces, moved on me from 4 different directions. To a normal person, it was an impossible situation. To me, it was a warm-up. The first bodyguard's fist flew at my face. I swayed to the side, and my elbow slammed into his ribs. He grunted and collapsed. The second man came in with a sweeping leg kick aimed at my knees. I didn't block it. I moved with it, grabbing his ankle and twisting it sharply. The sound of bones snapping echoed in the vast, empty space. The remaining 2 looked terrified. They finally realized they weren't dealing with some rich kid. They were dealing with a wolf in sheep's clothing. I didn't give them a chance to recover. 2 quick steps, and my hand shot out, closing around both of their throats. Less than 30 seconds. 4 trained killers, all down. My breathing hadn't even hitched. The warehouse was silent again. Victor's legs gave out. He collapsed to the floor, a dark stain spreading across the front of his pants. I walked toward him, one slow step at a time, like a predator approaching its prey. Don't kill me, he begged. How much do you want? I'll give you anything. 100 million. 1 billion. I crouched down and patted his bloodless cheek. Money? The one thing I don't need is money. I leaned in close, my voice a whisper only he could hear. Give my regards to the leader of Spectre. Tell him, The Reaper is back. Then, as his eyes widened in ultimate terror, I snapped his neck. After cleaning up the scene, I drove back to my downtown penthouse. I showered and changed back into that ridiculous pink suit. I picked up my phone and saw a new push notification from my financial app. Business miracle. Apex Global stock rebounds after mysterious capital injection. Controlling interest changes hands in under an hour. Former CEO Victor Shaw's whereabouts unknown. New CEO Leo Vance to assume position immediately. I smiled and sent a text to Evelyn. See? Told you it was easy. This time, she didn't block me. She replied with one word. Why? Why? That one word was a stone cast into the frozen lake of Evelyn's composure. She sat in her empty office, the city lights twinkling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. On her desk was the boba tea I had forced on her hours ago. It was warm now, but she hadn't thrown it away. Her mind was a chaotic storm. Apex Global, a corporate empire the size of her own, had changed hands in a matter of hours. And the man who orchestrated it all, the man who she had seen as nothing but an idiotic pest, had simply sent her a casual text, as if showing off a new toy. Who was he? A simple retired billionaire. A fool blinded by love? No. A fool couldn't orchestrate a corporate blitzkrieg of that magnitude. Her assistant knocked and entered, her expression conflicted. Ms. Reed, bad news. We just received a notice from Apex Global's legal team. They've unilaterally terminated their contracts with all of our downstream suppliers. Ms. Reed, all our former suppliers have called. They want to restore our contracts immediately, and they're offering an additional 10% discount on all previous rates. Evelyn wasn't surprised. When a king falls, the courtiers scatter to find a new one. With Victor gone, they were all scrambling for a new patron. Also, the assistant hesitated. The new CEO of Apex Global, Leo Vance, would like to invite you to lunch tomorrow. Leo Vance? Evelyn repeated the name. She vaguely remembered him as the laid-back, goofy-looking guy who was always with Jack. Decline the invitation, Evelyn said, rubbing her temples. But Ms. Reed, he said it was Mr. Carter who asked him to extend the invitation. Evelyn froze. Jack Carter. The name was a mantra, a puzzle box spinning in her mind. On a whim, she opened her phone and looked him up on Instagram. His profile was completely empty, save for a single post from that afternoon. It was a photo of his own back, standing in the doorway of an abandoned factory. The caption read, "Clocking out for the day." The lighting in the photo was strange. The setting sun cast his shadow long and thin across the floor, giving it a sense of profound loneliness and violence. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. She zoomed in on the picture, examining every detail. Suddenly, her gaze fixed on an unremarkable spot on the ground near the factory door. There was a dark, reddish stain there, an irregular shape, like a liquid had splattered and been hastily wiped away. Like blood. A preposterous thought wormed its way into her mind. Victor Shaw's disappearance, the hostile takeover of his company, Jack. And this picture, could they be connected? No, impossible. Evelyn immediately dismissed the idea. Jack was a businessman. No matter how rich or powerful, he couldn't be involved in something violent. She was just overthinking it. She put her phone down and tried to force herself to work. But his face kept appearing in her mind's eye. His goofy grin, his look of feigned sincerity, his casual, world-breaking confidence. The man was a walking paradox, and for the first time in her life, she felt a complete loss of control. Meanwhile, I was lying on the couch in my penthouse, eating potato chips and watching a live feed on my tablet. The feed was from a pinhole camera I'd installed in the smoke detector of Evelyn's office. It showed her, pacing and agitated. TSK. The Ice Queen looks pretty good even when she's stressed. I muttered to myself. Target is exhibiting significant emotional fluctuation, consistent with Phase 1 of Protocol B. The Colonel's synthesized voice buzzed in my earpiece. Protocol B was the emotional infiltration plan. When physical protection wasn't enough to handle a complex threat, you needed to get inside the target's head. Make them trust you, rely on you, even develop feelings for you. In short, seduce her. The Colonel's exact words had been, use your charm to conquer her. I'd want to tell him where he could shove his charm. I was a top-tier operative, codenamed Reaper. My hands were stained with the blood of warlords and terrorists. And now he wanted me to play Romeo? But an order was an order. Phase 1 complete. What's next? I asked. Manufacture a second accidental encounter. Initiate physical contact. Deepen the target's impression of you. Remember, it must feel accidental. Nothing forced. Understood. I shut off the monitor and stretched. Physical contact. This was going to be harder than killing someone. The next day, I didn't go see Evelyn. I spent the entire day at Apex Global's headquarters, my feet kicked up on Victor Shaw's old desk, ordering Leo around as he cleaned up the mess. Sell this land. Shaw wanted to build a golf course here. The man was an idiot. Kill this project. The data models are fake. It's a shell company to defraud investors. And this actress, terminate her endorsement deal. I'll cover the penalty. I hate that casting couch garbage. Leo was typing furiously, whining the whole time. Dude, you're killing me. You said you were retired. This is slave labor. To whom much is given, much is expected, I said, pushing a cup of coffee toward him. When you're done integrating Apex, I'll open that bottle of 82 Lafite I've been saving to celebrate. You're on. Leo was instantly re-energized. My plan was to show Evelyn I wasn't some fly buzzing around her 24/7. I had my own life, my own empire to run. Chasing her was just one of my many hobbies, and a low-priority one at that. It's called playing hard to get. Sure enough, by late afternoon, I got a text from Leo. Bro, fish on the line. Evelyn accepted the lunch invitation for tomorrow. I smiled. Women, always curious about the men they can't figure out. The next day at noon, I made sure to arrive 10 minutes late. When I walked into the Michelin-starred French restaurant, Evelyn was already there. She was wearing a white dress, which softened her corporate edge, making her look more approachable. When she saw me, she didn't scowl. She just gave me a cool, measured glance. Sorry I'm late. Something came up at the office, I said, pulling out the chair across from her. Your office? She asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Yeah, a little startup I just acquired, I said nonchalantly, still getting the hang of it. Evelyn didn't say anything, just watched me. Her gaze was like an X-ray, trying to see right through me. Mr. Carter, she finally said, what do you really want? I told you I want to date you, I said, not looking up from the steak I was cutting. And to do that, you acquire a multi-billion-dollar company. Her voice was laced with disbelief. What's the alternative? I looked up and gave her a smile. Send you flowers and ask you to a movie like some normal guy? Too inefficient. I prefer a more direct approach. My twisted logic seemed to stump her. She had probably never met a suitor quite so unique. Where is Victor Shaw? She asked suddenly. My hand paused for a fraction of a second before I resumed cutting my steak. Him? Probably on some private island, I imagine. Now that he's cashed out, he's probably enjoying the good life, I said breezily. Evelyn stared into my eyes, searching for a lie, but I've been trained to smile my way through polygraphs. Her silent pressure was child's play. Is that so? She said, looking away and taking a sip of water. I knew she didn't believe me, but she had no proof. The rest of the meal passed in a strangely charged atmosphere. We talked about everything from business models to philosophy. I was surprised to find that beneath her icy exterior, she possessed a formidable intellect and sharp opinions. And she was clearly just as surprised that the Playboy buffoon could not only keep up with her, but challenge her. After lunch, I walked her back to her company. We were in the underground parking garage, walking side by side toward her car. Suddenly, my ears twitched. I caught the faint but distinct sound of an engine revving where it shouldn't be. Look out! With no time to explain, I wrapped an arm around her waist and lunged to the side. We hit the concrete hard. An instant later, a runaway semi-truck careened through the exact spot where we had been standing, smashing violently into the wall. Crunch! The sound was deafening. The whole garage seemed to shake. I held Evelyn tight beneath me, my back shielding her from the shrapnel of flying concrete and glass. A sharp, searing pain shot through my back. I knew I was cut, but there was no time to worry about that. I looked up and saw the truck's driver's side door fly open. A man in a baseball cap jumped out, a gun in his hand, pointed right at us. Spectre, they found a new contractor already. My expression turned to ice. In my arms, Evelyn was clearly in shock. Her body was trembling, her face pale. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with terror and confusion. I could feel her hands clutching my shirt. It was the first time she had ever willingly touched me. "Don't be scared," I said with a reassuring smile. "I've got you." The gunman seemed surprised by my quick reaction. He hesitated for a second, then took aim. I wouldn't give him a second chance. Still holding Evelyn, I rolled an impossible angle, pulling us behind a massive concrete support column. A bullet whizzed past, striking sparks where we had just been. Evelyn let out a small cry and buried her face in my chest. I could smell the faint, clean scent of her shampoo. It was an intimate moment. A shame about the timing. "Hold on tight," I whispered. She instinctively wrapped her arms around my waist. I took a deep breath, the pain in my back a raging fire. I needed to end this. Fast. I pulled a quarter from my pocket. In nervous habit, I'd turned into a tool. "Hey, asshole, over here," I yelled. The gunman, enraged, opened fire on our position. Pop, pop, pop. Bullets chewed up the concrete pillar, sending chips flying. The moment he paused to reload, I flicked my thumb. The quarter shot out, whistling through the air. It struck the side view mirror of a nearby car with precision. The mirror shattered, reflecting a beam of light from the overhead lamps directly into the gunman's eyes. "Now!" I burst from behind the pillar. I moved so fast I was a blur. The gunman saw a flicker of movement, then felt a sharp pain in his wrist as his gun was torn from his grasp. The next second, a hand like an iron clamp closed around his throat. Crack! A soft, final sound. The world went quiet. I let go, and the man's body slumped to the ground. The whole thing took less than 3 seconds. I turned back. Evelyn was leaning against the pillar, staring at me, utterly dumbfounded. The look in her eyes was no longer disgust or suspicion. It was something I had never seen before, a mixture of fear, shock, and an undeniable flicker of awe. I walked over to her and held out my hand. "It's over. You can get up now." She didn't move. Her gaze fell to my back. My white shirt was stained dark red. You're bleeding," she said, her voice trembling. "It's just a scratch," I said with a shrug. I tried to help her up, but she shook her head stubbornly. She stood on her own, walked behind me, and gasped when she saw the gash in my back. "You call this a scratch?" Her voice was suddenly sharp with anger. "You have a death wish." She pulled out her phone to call 911. I grabbed her hand. "You can't," I said, shaking my head. "The cops will ask too many questions." "Questions? Is your life less important than a few questions?" It was the first time she had ever raised her voice at me. Seeing her so flustered, so genuinely concerned, I suddenly thought the injury was worth it. "Trust me on this," I said, looking her in the eyes. "Just get me somewhere private. I could take care of it myself." She hesitated. Her logical mind was screaming at her to call the police, to hand this mysterious, dangerous man over to the authorities. But her heart couldn't say no to his eyes. The eyes that were usually full of mockery and games were now steady, firm, and compelling. Finally, she bit her lip and made a decision that even she knew was insane. "Get in the car." She helped me to her Bentley. It was the first time she had ever opened a door for me. Evelyn didn't take me to a hospital. She drove me to a private villa she owned on the outskirts of the city. It was secluded with a top-of-the-line security system. "Where's the first aid kit?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just pushed me down onto a sofa and disappeared into another room. She returned with a professional-grade medical trauma kit. "Don't move." "I'll do it," she commanded. I was surprised. "You know how to treat a wound like this?" "I'm minored in pre-med," she said as she took a pair of scissors and carefully began to cut away the blood-soaked fabric of my shirt from my back. When the full extent of the wound was exposed, she couldn't help but suck in sharp breath. It was a gash nearly 8 inches long, deep, and raw. "This needs stitches. We have to go to a hospital," she said, her tone resolute. "Don't need to." I reached into the kit and pulled out a small metal tin. Inside was a dark powder and a simple suture kit I'd packed myself. "A friend of mine makes this stuff. It works wonders," I explained. Evelyn looked skeptically at my crude tools, but didn't argue. She took a pair of forceps, dabbed a cotton ball in alcohol, and began to clean the wound. Her touch was light, gentle. When the alcohol hit the raw flesh, I couldn't stop a low grunt from escaping, my body tensing. "Does it hurt?" she asked softly, pausing her work. "It's fine. Tell me if it hurts." Don't just endure it. Her voice. Was that a hint of sympathy? I froze. The Evelyn Reed I knew was a queen on a throne of ice. Who was this woman? The one who showed compassion. The one who seemed to care. After cleaning the wound, she applied the powder. A cool, soothing sensation spread across my back, and a searing pain began to fade. "What does your friend do?" she asked, her tone casual as she worked. "Oh, him? He's a veterinarian." Evelyn's hand jerked, nearly dropping the forceps. "A veterinarian?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yep," I said without batting an eye. "Specializes in thoroughbreds and prize-winning show dogs. He says animals have thicker hides, so his stuff has to be extra potent." Evelyn was silent. She probably thought my entire world was populated by lunatics. After applying the powder, she picked up the suture needle and took a deep breath. "This might hurt. Brace yourself. I'm ready." She began to stitch. Her technique was flawless, better even than some of the battlefield medics I'd worked with. I could hear the faint pull of the thread through my skin, but I remained silent. I just watched as the sky outside the large window slowly darkened. The silence stretched between us. "Jack," she said suddenly. "Yeah, today. Thank you. Like I said, I want to date you." "Protecting you is part of the job description," I replied, defaulting to my usual flippant tone. She didn't respond. After the last stitch, she tied a perfect knot and snipped the thread. "Done," she said, letting out a sigh. A fine sheen of sweat had appeared on her forehead. I rolled my shoulder. It felt much better. "Nice work," I complimented her. She ignored me and began quietly packing away the medical supplies. I stood up, about to put on the shredded remains of my shirt. "Don't move," she said, stopping me. "You're staying here tonight. I'll have my assistant bring you a change of clothes in the morning." I looked at her, surprised. Was she asking me to stay the night? "What's wrong?" "Worried I'll never leave," I teased, raising an eyebrow. Her face, in the dim light of the room, seemed to flush. "I'm worried you'll wander off. The wound will get infected, and you'll die in a ditch somewhere, and I'll get blamed for it," she retorted. "Don't worry. I'm hard to kill." I walked over to her, standing so close I could see the tremor in her long eyelashes, the flicker of panic in her eyes. "Evelyn," I said, my voice serious for once. "What happened with Shaw? What happened today? This is just the beginning. You in danger." Her body went rigid. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You will." I started to raise my hand, a reflexive gesture to pat her on the head, but stopped myself. I didn't have that right. Not now. I dropped my hand and turned toward the guest room. "Get some rest." I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, letting out a long breath. My back still throbbed, but a strange, unfamiliar feeling was spreading through my chest. I pulled out a bug detector, swept the room, and once I confirmed it was clean, I dialed the colonel's number. "Protocol B, Phase 2 is complete. But there was an incident. I've been injured." "How bad?" "Superficial. But Spectre has escalated. They're getting reckless. I need to know, what exactly is Starfire? Why are they so desperate to get it?" The colonel was silent for a long time. "Jack, there are some things you don't need to know. I'm the one in the field. I have a right to know what I'm protecting." I snapped. "It's because you're in the field that you can't know. It's for your own protection," the colonel said, his tone final. "Stick to the mission. Protect Evelyn Reed. We'll handle the rest." The line went dead. I threw the phone onto the bed in frustration. I hated being kept in the dark. Starfire. What the hell was it? The next morning, I woke up to the smell of something cooking. I walked out of the guest room and saw Evelyn in the kitchen. She was wearing a simple cotton pajama set, her hair tied up messily, her face free of makeup. She looked softer, more real than I had ever seen her. She was trying to fry an egg. Her movements were clumsy, and one of the eggs was already burnt. She saw me and quickly scraped the burnt egg into the trash. "You're awake. Breakfast is ready," she said. Her voice was still cool, but the wall of ice was gone. On the table were 2 simple sandwiches and 2 glasses of warm milk. I sat down and took a bite. It was mediocre at best. "Wow, this is amazing," I said with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Best sandwich I've ever had in my life." She shot me a withering look, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch upwards. "Where are my clothes?" I asked. My assistant dropped them off. "They're on the sofa." After breakfast, I changed into the new clothes. A casual suit from Armani. It fit perfectly. "Thanks." "It's nothing," she said, sipping her milk. Today, you're coming to the office with me. I blinked. What for? As of today, you're my personal bodyguard, she said, her gaze steady and non-negotiable. Salary is $100,000 a month. Until I feel safe again. I grinned. Personal bodyguard. I could work with that. Only $100K? Ms. Reed, you drive a hard bargain. I make more than that in a minute. I joked. So are you in or out? She challenged. In. Definitely in. I said, practically bowing. It would be my honor to serve you. I'd do it for free. She looked at my pathetic display and shook her head, but this time there was no hiding the smile in her eyes. When we arrived at the office together, everyone stared at us like they'd seen a ghost. The whispers exploded when Evelyn announced that I was her new personal bodyguard. The legendary billionaire Simp had gotten an official promotion. The look on the assistant's face was priceless. I gave her a triumphant wink, and she responded with a magnificent eye roll. For the rest of the day, I shadowed Evelyn like a loyal puppy. When she was in meetings, I sat in the corner, pretending to play on my phone while I scanned every person in the room. When she was working, I stood guard outside her office door like a sentinel. Around noon, Leo called, asking to take Evelyn to lunch. I shot him down. All of Ms. Reed's social engagements will be managed by me from now on, I declared into the phone. Leo's howls of protest were epic. Dude, that's a gross abuse of power. You can't do that. I hung up on him. That evening, Evelyn had a charity gala to attend. As her bodyguard, I was her plus one. I changed into a tailored black tuxedo. Standing next to her in her evening gown, we actually looked good together. The ballroom was a sea of glittering jewels and fake smiles. A steady stream of people came over to greet Evelyn, and every single one of them gave me a knowing, amused look. I ignored them all, my attention focused on my duty, standing half a step behind her, my eyes constantly sweeping the room. And then, my gaze locked onto one person. A waiter, carrying a tray of drinks. His posture, his gaze, the way his weight was balanced on the balls of his feet as he walked. It was the same training I had. He was one of us. A professional. I watched as he moved subtly toward Evelyn. On his tray was a single glass of red wine. Something was wrong with that wine. I didn't make a scene. Just as the waiter reached Evelyn's side, I accidentally bumped into him. Oh, sorry about that, I said quickly. The tray tilted, and the entire glass of red wine spilled down the front of my tuxedo. No, it's my fault, I said, dabbing at the stain with a napkin. As I did, my fingers brushed against his wrist. His pulse jumped. A tiny, almost imperceptible flutter. He was nervous. My sincerest apologies, sir. The hotel will, of course, cover the cost of cleaning, the waiter said, his head bowed. Don't worry about it, I said, clapping him on the shoulder and leaning in to whisper in his ear. But next time, I'd suggest a different poison. The almond scent from cyanide is a dead giveaway. His entire body went rigid. When he looked up at me, his face a mask of horror, I was already leading Evelyn onto the dance floor. What are you doing? She asked, annoyed. Care to dance, Ms. Reed? I asked with a wink. The music started, and I swept her into a waltz. My hand was on her waist. Hers was on my shoulder. We were very close. That waiter was dirty, I murmured in her ear as we danced. How do you know? I smelled almonds on him. Cyanide. The color drained from her face. Jack, she said, stopping mid-step and looking directly at me. Who are you? It was the second time she had asked me that question. This time, I didn't deflect with a joke. I'm the man who's trying to keep you alive. Just then, all the lights in the ballroom went out. The room plunged into darkness and chaos. Screams erupted. My gut clenched. They're here. Without a second of hesitation, I pulled Evelyn into my arms and sprinted for the nearest emergency exit. Hold on to me, and don't make a sound. In the dark, I could hear the sound of running footsteps and the soft fut-fut-fut of suppressed gunfire. There was more than one. They were planning to kill everyone in the room. The emergency stairwell was lit by a sickly green light. I pulled Evelyn along, taking the stairs 3 at a time. The footsteps behind us were getting closer. How many are there? Evelyn's voice was surprisingly calm. At least 5. All pros. I answered without breaking stride. We reached the ground floor, but the main doors were chained shut. This way. I pulled her toward the hotel kitchen. The kitchen was chaos. Chefs and servers were hiding under tables. We had barely burst through the doors when two assassins dressed as chefs came at us from either side, wielding long butcher knives. Evelyn squeezed her eyes shut. I didn't slow down. I shoved her out of the way and ran straight at them. I dodged the first knife, twisted the man's wrist, and in a fluid motion, the knife was in my hand. I plunged it into his chest. At the same time, I launched a spinning kick that sent the second man's knife flying, then followed it with an elbow strike to his temple. Two men down in under 5 seconds. I grabbed the still stunned Evelyn and kept moving. Out here. I kicked open the kitchen's back door. It led to a narrow alley. We had just made it outside when figures appeared at both ends of the alley, blocking our escape. We were surrounded. The man in the lead was the waiter who had tried to poison me. He had dropped the disguise. His face was twisted into a cruel sneer. "Reaper," he said, his accent unplaceable. "Long time no see." My pupils contracted. That name. Only the inner circle of Spectre knew that call sign. "Who are you?" I asked, pushing Evelyn behind me. "Who I am is not important. What is important is that today, both of you die here." He waved his hand, and his men raised their guns. Evelyn's face went white. She had never seen anything like this in her life. "Jack," she whispered, her hand clutching the back of my jacket. I glanced back at her and gave her a small smile. "Don't be scared," I said. "Remember what I told you? 99% of the world's problems can be solved." And the other 1%? She asked. "The other 1%, I said, turning back to face our enemies, my gaze turning razor sharp, is when they run into me." As the words left my mouth, I moved. I pulled the butcher knife from my belt and threw it with impossible speed and precision. It flew through the air, a silver blur, and embedded itself in the throat of the gunman on the left. As he fell, I charged to the right. Bullets zipped past my ears. I kicked off the brick wall, launching myself into the air over the heads of the remaining gunmen. Mid-air, I snatched a pistol from one of their hands. I landed, spun, and fired. Bang, 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 3 shots. 3 men fell. The whole sequence was a single, fluid motion. The alley was now empty, except for the leader. The sneer on his face had been replaced by pure terror. He couldn't believe it. The Reaper, who was supposed to be retired and rusty, was faster and more lethal than ever. He turned to run. He never had a chance. I raised the pistol and shot him in the knee. He screamed and collapsed. I walked over to him and pressed the muzzle of the gun against his forehead. "Tell me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "What is Starfire? And who is your leader?" He looked up at me and laughed, a strange, gurgling sound. "Reaper, you'll never find out." As he spoke, a trickle of black blood ran from the corner of his mouth. His head lolled to the side. He was dead. Cyanide capsule in a tooth. I frowned and tossed the gun aside. The alley was silent again. It was just me and Evelyn. She was leaning against the wall, staring at me, at the bodies on the ground, as if she was looking at a complete stranger. And in a way, she had only ever known the goofy, annoying, lovesick Jack Carter. She had never seen this version of me. The killer. The Reaper. My cover was blown to pieces. I walked over to her, unsure of what to say. Should I explain? Should I stay silent? In the end, I just reached out and gently wiped a small speck of blood from her cheek. "Did I scare you?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just looked at me, and her eyes suddenly filled with tears. Then she did something I never expected. She threw herself at me, wrapping her arms around me in a desperate hug. I could feel her whole body shaking. "Jack, you bastard." She sobbed into my chest. How much? How much have you been hiding from me?" I stood there, stunned, and let her hold me. I knew how to kill, but I had no idea how to comfort a woman. After a long time, she finally pulled away. Her eyes were red, but her gaze was resolute. "We need to get out of here," she said. In the distance, the sound of sirens was getting closer. I nodded, took her hand, and led her down a different side street, disappearing into the night. We went back to her villa. Neither of us spoke during the drive. Once inside, she didn't ask any questions. She just got the first aid kit and started tending to the new collection of scrapes and bruises I had acquired. I watched her, her head bowed in concentration as she disinfected a cut on my arm, and felt a storm of emotions inside me. "Evelyn," I said finally. "I'm sorry. Don't," she interrupted. "Don't say anything. When you're ready to tell me, you'll tell me." She paused, then added, "I'll wait." I was floored. Those 2 words hit me harder than any bullet ever had. Just then, my encrypted phone rang. It was the Colonel. "Jack, get out of there now. The leader of Spectre, a man known as Wraith, has just entered the country. You are his target." My blood ran cold. Wraith, the only operative in the world whose reputation rivaled my own. He was here, in person. Starfire had to be more important than I could ever imagine. "I can't leave," I said, my eyes on Evelyn. "If I leave, what happens to her?" "We'll send a new team. That's an order." The Colonel's voice was harsh. I refused. I hung up the phone. I couldn't leave. If I left, Wraith would make Evelyn his new target. She would die. I put down the phone and saw Evelyn watching me. She had heard everything. "You have to go?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I shook my head. "I'm not leaving," I said, looking her in the eyes. "Not unless you tell me to." Her eyes welled up with tears again. "Jack," she said, stepping closer and reaching up to gently touch my face. Were you ever really trying to win me over?" "No," I answered honestly. Her hand faltered. "Then all of this, it was just for the mission?" "Yes." I saw the flicker of pain in her eyes. Then she took a deep breath, as if summoning all her courage. "After the mission is over, will you leave?" I looked at her, at the raw hope and fear in her eyes. My heart felt like it had been struck by lightning. I realized then that this mission, this lie, had somewhere along the line become the truth. I wasn't just protecting her anymore. I actually want to be with her. "No," I said, my voice hoarse. "When a mission is over, I'm going to start over. And this time, it won't be for the mission. It will be for you." She smiled. It was like watching a glacier melt in the spring sun. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. She rose up on her toes and pressed a soft, gentle kiss to my lips. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll be waiting." In that moment, with the moonlight streaming through the window, I knew that the real battle had just begun. But this time, we were on the same side. A month later, Wraith was in a black site prison, and Spectre was a footnote in a classified file. The Starfire chip was recovered. It was a simple thumb drive Evelyn's father had left her, containing the technical data for controlled nuclear fusion, a technology that could change the world. I received my official, final retirement papers from the Colonel. Evelyn and I were married on a beach on the Gold Coast. Leo was my best man. He cried harder than I did, wailing that his best friend had finally been taken down by a woman. During the ceremony, just as I was about to kiss my bride, my phone rang. A strange, encrypted number. I answered. The Colonel's familiar, synthesized voice came through the line. "Reaper, congratulations on your marriage." "Thanks. I'm also calling to inform you of a new mission." I scowled. "I'm retired. This is a final, top priority assignment," the Colonel said. "Codename, Honeymoon. Target, Evelyn Reed. Mission directive, make her the happiest woman in the world. Mission duration, 1 lifetime." "That is an order." I was stunned silent for a moment. Then I smiled. I looked at Evelyn, my wife, impossibly beautiful in her wedding dress, and ended the call. "Who was that?" she asked. "A telemarketer," I said. Then I leaned in and kissed her. To hell with missions. To hell with orders. This time, I was Jack Carter. Just Jack Carter.